What's up?
Yo, shout out to the second best barbecue in Dallas.
Let's get it.
Let's do it, fellas. How's everybody doing?
Everybody's doing good. So we got a lot to talk about, gentlemen. The Facebook Pound for Pound group has been pretty heated. A lot of action has occurred prior to this episode, and there's a lot of action to occur after this episode. With the, we're going to start off with, obviously, with the Kovalev versus Anthony Yarde fight, but we're going to go on and talk about Lomachenko versus Luke Campbell. That just happened Saturday. And we got a lot of other stuff that we got to talk about with Sean Porter, Spence coming up, Anthony Joshua and Andy Ruiz, obviously going to Saudi Arabia, doing their little press thing there, now coming back here to New York. That's a highly anticipated match that's going to happen in a couple of months. And we have much more. There's, for those who say boxing is dead, I always keep saying this, and I keep reverting back to this all the time. You don't know nothing about the sport. Boxing is well alive and will continue to be alive for the next 100,000 years. So let's talk about the Kovalev versus Anthony Yarde fight. I got a lot to talk about in that because Kobe got a lot of hate from a lot of people. And obviously there's talks about Canelo versus Sergey Kovalev coming, at some point in September, October, November. And I hear a lot of people talking about this is an easy fight for Canelo. I'm one to disagree. I know, D-Rock, you want to jump in first, and I'm going to give you the mic very soon. But I'm going to, to me, it's a dangerous fight. And I know that lately Kovalev has been very suspect when it comes to the midsection. But Kovalev is a veteran, a Hall of Famer, in my opinion. Maybe not first ballot, but this is a guy who, in my opinion, in a first fight against Andre Ward, I think that he could have gotten the nod. I think it was somewhat of a draw. I don't think Andre Ward deserved the W. I thought it was a draw, in my opinion. Obviously, Andre Ward took care of business the second fight around. But Sergey Kovalev is known to have a very, very great jab and a lot of power behind a jab. But before I tell you what my prediction is about, when it comes to that fight with Canelo, D-Rock, I'm going to pass you the mic. I know you got a lot to talk about when it comes to Kovalev.
Absolutely. Before we even touch on the possibility of that matchup, I do want to congratulate Sergey Kovalev on the victory. The fight versus Anthony Yarde, I actually predicted that he would stop Yarde by the 8th round. Obviously, it took a few more rounds after that. I just think the experience and the overall skill level was going to be too much for Yarde to overcome. And prior to that, Yarde's inexperience with that type of caliber of opponent hadn't prepared him for the different elements that he was going to face with Sergey Kovalev. Which brings me to another point. I think someone in the Pound for Pound group, I think it was Keon, had created a post saying that, Sergey's best win was against Bernard Hopkins, which wasn't true because what a lot of people fail to realize is maybe on paper it may have looked the best because of the implications at the time and what Bernard Hopkins was doing. But people got to remember, he got the name Crusher for a reason. No one wanted to fight him, especially the guy who had the lineal light heavyweight title around his waist, and Adonis Stevenson didn't want any parts of Sergey Kovalev for 3 to 4 years, and I think we can all agree on that. Now, here's my thing. With the Canelo matchup coming about, yes, the questions about Kovalev's midsection are a concern because Andre Ward was able to expose that liability in his game. But we need to also commend him when he was hit with big shots from Yarde in his last fight. He didn't go down. Yarde ran out of gas himself. He maxed out, and he wasn't able to put him down on the mat. You mentioned Kovalev's jab a few seconds ago, and when we're talking about Canelo's advantages going into the fight, how he'd be able to masterfully attack at the midsection, we also had to look at Canelo's going to have to overcome that masterful jab, which Kovalev throws at different speed, different power, and at different levels, also being the bigger boxer who's used to taking punches from bigger guys. It's not that fight to me is not going to be a matter of who's the better boxer, because Canelo's obviously the better boxer in that matchup. It's going to come down as to who can withstand those punches for 8, 9, 10, 11 rounds. And to me, Kovalev does have the advantage as far as facing the bigger fighters and possessing the one punch that can negate the body work of a smaller fighter. And I may be wrong. Canelo's never fought at 175. I'm not sure or what weight he walks around at, but I know Kovalev easily walks around north of 200 when he's not in training camp. So that to me is going to be a big factor if that fight ever materializes. I just don't see how Canelo can overcome the size difference. The experience level, yes, Canelo does have the better resume by far. Let's not even compare that. I'm just not sure he's ready to step up essentially 2 big weight classes against a very, very hard-hitting light heavyweight, because he only had one fight at 168 against Rocky Fielding, which was honestly just a stay busy fight.
So all the points you mentioned are absolutely fantastic, and I have to agree with you. I don't think you could have said it, or anyone could have said it any better than what you just mentioned. And it's sort of my take on it. Does Canelo have some advantages? Yes, but at the same time, Kovalev, being the bigger boxer, also being a heavy-handed puncher, also having a jab that can keep Canelo, honest, and also having a reach and height advantage. Not much of a height advantage, but still an advantage, and he does have the reach advantage. I think it poses a problem for Canelo, and it's also a different weight division. Is Canelo's power? How is it going to translate him going up against a guy who's probably used to getting hit hard by guys with very similar power? Let's not kid ourselves. Anthony Yarde might have not had the experience to be there, but Anthony Yarde is as hard of a puncher as they come. He had 17 knockouts out of 18 fights going into that match, and yes, not against very good opponents, but nonetheless, when you knock opponents out left to right, that means you have power. Doesn't matter the caliber of opponents. Right?
Just very quickly, and jump back in. He had enough power to warrant the title shot.
Correct. And he had enough power to hurt a guy that, rarely got hurt. I mean, the last time we saw him visibly hurt was against Andre Ward. Obviously, he went down. And prior to that, I think there was 2 or 3 matches before that. I forget who the fighter was, who the boxer was, but he went.
Alvarez.
Actually, it was Alvarez, the Cuban fighter. But before that, go ahead.
And I'm sorry, but very quickly, for perspective and for everyone's perception of the matchup problem, the other titleist now, 175, John Pascal, who was able to beat Marcus Brown, who's a very, very, very good boxer, and is about 6'2", 6'3". Sergey Kovalev destroyed John Pascal.
Correct.
Destroyed another light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, that's correct. That's fact. And we saw what he did when he fought Alvarez the second time in the rematch. I mean, he clearly avenged his loss. And I mean, Alvarez is no slouch. He comes from that traditional Cuban school of boxing. Very good. Not really a heavy-handed puncher, although he did drop Sergey. I just felt like against Alvarez, Sergey just was very careless. He didn't make that same mistake the second time around. But it'll be interesting. Don't want to take nothing away from Anthony Ward, so I do want to go back and talk about his performance as well. I'm going to pass the mic to Courtney on this one. I'd like to hear his thoughts on Anthony Yarde. Is he the real deal? Did he show you pockets where he can improve and potentially be at the top of that division? Was there anything that he did that impressed you other than that round 8? Courtney, you got the mic, bud.
Well, I mean, I think with Anthony Yarde, I think we all knew in the back of our minds that it was going to be the intangible and the factor in that fight was going to be experience, and it played out just like that. Experience as far as he had Kovalev dead to rights, and he couldn't do it in that 8th round, and he couldn't do anything with it because, I mean, it kind of looked like a combination of both him not knowing how to finish and him being weary of what was coming back, but also him just being dead tired. And, when the experience, that's a part of that. When you're on the championship level, when you're fighting a 12-round title fight, you have to, with the rounds, you have to know how to conserve energy and output up to that point to where, when your opening does come and you do have a guy in trouble that, you can get him out of there. But, I mean, with Yarde, I mean, as far as him being the real deal or him being the goods, well, the litany of it is what got him to this point is that he was fighting nothing but European-level competition. He was never fighting anybody who was world-class. He had wins that were impressive enough for the WBO to install him as the number one guy and get him as mandatory. But, I mean, he never really had anything on his resume other than a good skill set, other than being an athlete, other than, basically just basically doing enough to get there. But none of those opponents he faced up to then were the level of opponent that would prepare you to go up against a Kovalev. So with Yarde, as far as the real deal, I think there's room potentially if he comes back from this loss for him to be. But I mean, when you take a loss like that, it kind of remains to be seen. Whether a loss like that, how much it took out of him. But with Yarde also, he needs to change everything up in regard to his training, how he trains, how he conducts camp, and who he's got in his corner, give him directions. The stories were coming out that he did no sparring in his training camp in preparation for the fight, and also, watching the fight and, when going back to the corners during the breaks, his corner really wasn't giving him any tangible advice as far as what to do, how to make the adjustments, and how to close it out and win the fight. So, as far as Yarde is concerned, he's got a long road ahead of him. It's almost to a point where he has to go back to the drawing board and start at ground zero day one if he's going to get back to the level of fighting for another championship, unless his promoter kind of just steers him in a direction where he's going to get he's going to get fed the guys on the strength of him being a former title challenger. That's always a possibility. We see guys continually get shots, title shots, and not necessarily being deserving of it. So, I mean, I think a lot remains to be seen. Just quickly, before I hand it back off, in regard to Canelo Alvarez versus Kovalev, a potential matchup, at first when the possibility was being spoken of, I really didn't think there was much sincerity coming out of Canelo or from Oscar or from Golden Boy or from DAZN. I thought it was just kind of a stalling or a negotiation tactic because they really weren't interested in taking that third fight with Canelo, but they really didn't have an opponent they could credibly put in place of a Canelo. It was pretty much like, if you're not going to fight Canelo, you got to make a big fight. And I thought Kovalev was just a name that camp was throwing out. But after seeing Kovalev's performance against Yarde, I'm convinced that Canelo was very keen on that fight because he sees something. And what I see is that Kovalev is going to be tailor-made for Canelo. Is it going to be in the walk in the park? Is it going to be a cakewalk? No, it never is when you're jumping up 2 divisions in these higher weight classes, because the weight disparity, it gets bigger and bigger. And, there is a good point. Kovalev does walk around considerably heavier when he's not fighting. But the thing is, Canelo, he continually comes into fights at, up to over 175 pounds when he was fighting at 154. So, he's got the frame for it. That's not necessarily the height, but he does so many things that negate that and make up for that. I think Canelo could be very game. And I even have him as a favorite to stop Kovalev late if and when that matchup happens. I see Canelo not even coming in at the 175 limit, just coming in at a weight that's very comfortable for him, where he'd be very nimble and just taking advantage of the intangibles that Kovalev presents to him. Listen, we know that Kovalev is rather chinny. We saw that against Eliander Alvarez. We know that Kovalev doesn't like it to the body. We saw that in both of his fights against Ward. And we know that he's not a physical guy who will continually engage on the inside. Ward pointed that out during the commentary, that Kovalev is not a physically strong guy for his imposing physique and frame. He's very easy to maneuver on in the inside and in the pocket and in the phone booth like that. And those are all things that Canelo does very well. And I think those are all going to be clear advantages for Canelo should that fight happen.
Points, gentlemen, before I go to the rest of the cast, we do have a caller. I'm going to patch that person in. Let me see. 631, introduce yourself.
Hey, guys, it's Nick Andrami.
Yo, what up, bro?
Nick, what's up, Paisan?
How you guys doing? So, to touch on what Courtney's saying, yeah, I get that Canelo has certain – and first of all, I think Canelo wins that fight, just as a disclaimer. But what's not being touched on here is Canelo historically has problems with the strong jab. Sergey Kovalev arguably has one of the better jabs in boxing. It's accurate, it's strong, and it's long. Canelo's, 5'8"? Kovalev is 5'11".
He's 5'9". 5'9".
Yeah, 5'9" on a boxing scorecard is 5'8" in real life.
Yo, he's 6 feet in Mexico with me.
Yeah,
6'5".
Exactly. Yeah,
so,
if it was high school football,
that
he'd be 6'2".
Kovalev's only about 5'11".
Sure, still much bigger than 5'7". So not only that, Canelo has a lot of mid-round stamina issues. He's going to now have to put on 15 pounds of muscles, maybe, and somehow carry that much better. Right? So he has his own mid-fight struggles, and now he's fighting a guy. Now, Kovalev obviously has fatigue issues and stamina issues, but now he's fighting Kovalev's weight class. So he has to get inside that long jab, carrying more weight, and still be more fresh and fight inside in a long 12 rounds.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tough fight. I think Canelo, the youth is on his side. The judges are on his side. Golden Boy beats Duva any day. And he'd have to work the body all night, but he has to get inside a very long, strong jab in a somewhat revived Kovalev under Buddy McGirt. And that's being discounted here. Canelo's being looked at as a favorite, but nobody touches on his stamina issues, his fatigue issues, and his troubles with the jab. They're better served fighting Pascal.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nobody wants to see that shit.
Yeah, Nick, what's up? It's Danny.
Hey, Danny.
The 15 pounds of muscle. Let's assume he eats 50 pounds of clenbuterol meat. But all jokes aside, let's say he wins that fight. In your opinion, what's next for him? Does he stay at 75 with that title? What is he doing? Because
no, hell no. What's the point?
He's navigated between 3 weight classes.
Why
Does
would
he fight any of your guys?
No, why would he say 175 when you have guys like Bodzik and, Better Beeve and Bivol who will take his head off, who are natural 175-pounders?
Yeah, and that's exactly what. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm asking you that question. Yes, absolutely, Courtney. That's another topic that people are talking about for a Cinco de Mayo or September date. But let's face it, if Golden Boy's making excuses for them not finding a credible opponent for Canelo to have a fight this September, Ramirez, for what it's worth, is not a draw, not a pay-per-view name. And, you're not going to get 3 million Mexicans to buy that fight.
Well, the Mexicans don't buy the fight.
You'll get over 1 million.
Streams are, in Mexico, the streams are free, right? So the biggest pay-per-view fights on Mexican TV are on terrestrial. That said, I do get that point, but they could put him against BJS, who is a draw. You have 10,000 English fans where it is, right? I think Kovalev, they're hoping that it's the Kovalev that fought Alvarez, who's on the way down, fatigued, probably overlooks what his trainer says. But now that it's a bit somewhat revived Kovalev, you may see a bit of apprehension in their camp.
For you, Nick, and you touched on a little bit on this right now. So, just switching gears for a second, let's forget Canelo for just 1 second. We'll get back to him. Let's talk about what's next also for Kovalev being at his age. Like, he's got some big monsters in his weight division that more than likely can beat him and beat him bad, right? So because of that, do you think that maybe a fight against Canelo, and I'm going back again to Canelo, might be attractive from a financial standpoint versus going against a guy like Beterbiev, Bivol, or Alexandra, or one of those guys? I mean, what would you do if you're his camp? If you're Buddy McGirt, what do you advise?
That's a simple question. Anybody can answer that. Obviously, you target the smaller guy that's the biggest star in the sport. What's $15 million against a guy that won't, he may beat you, but he's not going to end your career if you want to go that way, or $2 million against a hungry guy like Bivol who may take your head off.
Direct the same question. Well, it's a similar question to Tommy. Really quick, is Tommy is back in. I'm going to come back to you in a second. So, Tommy, what's going on? Tommy,
what up?
He says, fuck that, I'm not going to fight Canelo. Let's say Canelo says, you know what, we're not going to fight Kovalev because he poses too much of a risk. So let's say Kovalev has no other choice but to face one of the three monsters in his division. Who do you think is the most viable opponent for him where you believe it's feasible for him beating?
Man, to be honest, I mean, I would almost just go ahead and say Bivol, just and not based off of his complete body of work, but what I've seen out of him in the last couple of fights. I mean, it hasn't been like amazing, and I mean, Kovalev is Kovalev. He is a very dangerous fighter, and I mean, I think that may be one where if he was to go up against Bivol, I think that it would be a great fight. It's one that Bivol could win, but I think for Kovalev on his side of the fence, that that would probably be one of the better ones and one of the more enjoyable ones that I would like to see as well.
The spectrum, really quick, Courtney, who do you think is the guy that beats him outright, probably puts him in the canvas multiple times?
Who, Kovalev? Are we talking about Kovalev?
Yeah. He's talking about
out
Kovalev.
of the three opponents in the light heavyweight division, who do you think is absolutely will be a devastating opponent for Kovalev?
Well, I'm gonna make a bold statement on air right now, and I might eat my words pretty emphatically later on, but this is just how I see it. Bivol ain't no monster. I think Kovalev. I think out of the three current title holders right now, Kovalev has his best chance against Bivol. I think Beterbiev and I think Gvozdyk beat the shit out of Kovalev. But I think Kovalev versus Bivol, that's a fight I actually see Kovalev winning. I like his chances against Bivol more than I do against Canelo. In fact, I think Canelo could come up and give Bivol a run for his money, if not beat him. I mean, that's just from a trajectory styles make fights. But yeah, I think if we're stacking Kovalev up against the three other title holders at 175, I think Kovalev pretty much he's not beating Gvozdyk or Beterbiev, but I like his chances against Bivol. Also another fight, he's not a title holder, but he's a title holder at 168 moving up, and he fights on ESPN. Is El Zurdo, Gilberto Ramirez. I think that's a very likely fight for Kovalev, win or lose against Canelo if it happens in November.
I think Kovalev washes Gilberto Ramirez. I think he washes. Like,
I gotta agree with you on that as well.
Kovalev, just beat the number one contender for the WBO title. and if I'm not mistaken, Ramirez was probably in the top 5 ranked, and he just moved up. But when you look at those top 175 pounders, honestly the three that matter are Kovalev, Bivol, and Beterbiev, because he already beat the other title holder in John Pascal. Alvarez is still ranked pretty high up in the top 10, who he avenged his loss against. I think Kovalev in the next one, if he doesn't face Canelo, will face a tough opponent, probably like and this is another fight I'm going to mention who a lot of people overlook, and this is Callum Johnson, also from the UK, who has 1 loss on his record. If the Canelo fight falls through, because
Caleb Smith.
Yeah, no, Caleb Smith is at 168. I'm talking about Johnson, the 175 pounder with 1 loss. Because that's another topic for another day, because that's who Canelo should be fighting. But we'll touch on that another time. But Caleb Johnson is another viable opponent for Kovalev at that weight class if the Alexander or the Bivol fight fall through, in my opinion. Because right now I think he washes Gilberto Ramirez.
Hey guys, let me ask the panel a question here. Why is Beterbiev being rated so highly by everybody? Name me an opponent of his that puts him so highly for regard here in these matchups.
I'll go ahead and tackle that one, and I'll be very honest with that one when discussing Beterbiev. I rate Beterbiev personally highly off just the eye test and the potential. I'll be perfectly honest about that. But that's on the same trajectory too. Is I think a person like you asking me that question, and me being honest with it. I think people have to be equally honest though when they talk about Bivol. And, I hear so many people, making the argument or making the case for Bivol. Like, I feel the way which you just asked me, I feel the same way about Bivol.
Sure.
I've just, I've never seen anything with
But
Bivol.
Put Bivol to the side for a second. We're talking about Beterbiev, right? And Bivol is, 28, 29. Beterbiev is on the wrong side of 36, I believe, right? So you can't say, he has all this potential.
34.
The guy's nearing 40. Right, so he's mid-30s, and he doesn't have a single great opponent, and was dropped hard in his last fight, I believe. Right, so we're sitting here talking about the greatness of this guy that might as well be fighting on Roy Jones Promotions, and fighting once every 9 months against, your mailman, and people are saying, he's the killer in this division. People do forget that he fought Kovalev in the amateurs in a very disputed victory towards Beterbiev took it, but if you look at the pundits at the time, Kovalev
he beat him a few times in the amateurs. It was more than once.
Sure, but you look at the writing, people said nonstop. It was very political. Even that, the guy's 35, hasn't fought a single real opponent of note, and we're all rating him above the 28-year-old killer of Bivol. Vasyl is an excellent fighter, just unfortunately damn near killed Stevenson. But Beterbiev is getting dropped by guys we never heard of, and we're all sitting here rating him as such a killer. I just don't get it.
You know what the thing is?
Anybody can get dropped.
You know what?
That's the thing. If we're discounting on getting dropped, that's kind of I think that's kind of
no. It's not about just getting dropped, but maybe it's not against a good opponent.
No,
right?
Absolutely. And just to touch on your point very quickly, he is over 30. He's 34 actually, but he's trending. If maybe a little late in his career, but he's trending because we're about to find out next month what he's made of when he fights Alexander down at the Lear Court Center in Philadelphia, and he did knock out a really, really good fighter in Hot Rod, and if I'm not mistaken, he did knock out the guy I just mentioned, Callum Johnson. So the guy does have the skill set and the power to be champion and to be feared, for that matter. And I think that's what it boils down to. It's not the eye test helps, but he's fighting these guys. He has 14 wins by knockout. all by knockout.
Yeah, Yarde had 17 of 18 wins by knockout when he fought Kovalev. My point here is everyone is overweighing the eye test on Beterbiev, but if he loses against Vodzik, nobody will talk about him again in a year. But we're rating him right now as extremely high, not beyond contender, a killer. Sure, he fought Callum Johnson. That's his best win in his career. These other guys all have real wins.
Yeah, points. But
okay,
I'll ask this
conversely. I'll ask this conversely, Nick. You're very high on Vodzik. Before the Stevenson fight, who was Vozdik's who was Vozdik's defining win before he beat Stevenson though?
Yeah, I get that, but what do you do? He beat Stevenson.
What's up?
But you said before he beat Stevenson, right? So you're saying before he beat the lineal title holder. But what did he do? He beat the lineal title holder. So we don't need to talk about the before.
And Beterbiev might very well beat Vozdik.
Sure. But until then, we're talking about him right now as a proven commodity, when right now what he really is hype.
Couldn't go all that.
We can talk eye test all day.
I think hype is very hype. That's very tricky, man.
Let me interject for 1 second.
I get what you're saying. He does have a title. Saying he beat a nondescript opponent for a title or whatever. But like I said, with the intangibles, the eye test, and the skill set, the guy's power. You know what I'm saying? And at these higher weight classes, that power that does make a huge difference.
Yeah, but they all have it. Every single one of these guys named has power. Now, obviously, Bivol seems to want to break you down, and Vodzik doesn't want to commit. He likes to just box guys and break them down, but they all have it. And I am playing devil's advocate here. It's fun to kind of throw a wrench in this Beterbiev hype train, but he's chinny. He gets dropped. He doesn't fight great fighters. He's not that active. He's sitting here fighting Seminole Hard Rock Casino fighters. Right? While we're talking about guys that beat the lineal champ, that fought at the highest division, and we're still putting him in equal footing right now. We'll see when he fights Vodzik. But who here thinks he beats Vodzik?
I do. And we got money on
We
that.
know you do. Who else?
He does. I have to second.
Come on. Okay. But with Vodzik, okay, let's say, okay, he has a win against the lineal champion. He beat the lineal champion who was over 40 years old and chronically inactive as well. I mean, that's if we're gonna paint the picture, let's paint a complete one.
Listen, he just came off a win against Badu Jack right before that.
How good was Badu Jack though?
So what? You're moving the goalposts every single time right here.
And so are you
right
though.
now.
No,
I'm not.
But you are too. And yes, you are.
No, I haven't moved it once. Vodzik has beat the lineal champ, right? Beterbiev is essentially nobody. Now I don't want to derail the whole combo. It wasn't even about Beterbiev, but I just saw this Beterbiev, circle jerk, and I just wanted to say why, but.
Just be sure to come on air. Please come on air though. In the event that Beterbiev does beat Kovalev. We love to hear from you.
I would be happy to. I don't mind either way. Listen, I don't like either guy that much.
We're gonna keep on moving. It's a great topic. You have some valid points. He has a strong amateur career. He's got gold medals. He did fight, I think, USEC in 2011, lost. But we're gonna move on to.
Hold on.
Yeah, Sean Porter beat Usyk in the amateurs. What are we talking about amateurs?
Before we move on, I just want Chad Dawson to come back.
As a commentator, I hope.
I hate all of y'all.
So we're gonna move on to a fighter that's worthy of talking about amateur career and pro career, a guy that just fought, who still for some reason gets a little bit of hate by some people on this panel. I'm not going to mention any names. Daniel Pena. But Lomachenko just fought Luke Campbell in a pretty hard fight. Luke Campbell visibly bigger than Lomachenko, but yet Lomachenko had him in trouble in a couple of rounds, 2 or 3 rounds, and clearly won the fight. Although some people had, I'm not going to mention Manuel's name, Sorry, I did. But some people had it as a close fight, and I want to get everybody's opinion and also, a record of your scorecards, if we may. And I'm going to start with Aaron. Aaron, you watched the fight. What was your opinion? What was your opinion on the fight? Who did you think won? I mean, it was obvious, but what was your reaction as far as the fight as a whole?
It was a very competitive fight between Lomachenko and Campbell. In every round, Campbell gave his best, and he made it a fight for Lomachenko. But unfortunately, Lomachenko was just too skilled. To get within his range and just punishing him to the body, and at one point made Campbell take a knee. So I think the win over Campbell is one of his highlight careers. Now he has a third belt in his fourth weight class. So and in my opinion, I know this is another talking point in this segment. I think this solidifies him at the moment number one in the pound for pound rankings.
You're going to stir up some feathers in this group.
Whoa.
You're going to stir up some feathers in this group. Tommy, I haven't heard much from you. Obviously, you watched the fight. What was your reaction? And do you agree with what Aaron just said regarding being the number one pound for pound?
Hell no, I do not agree with that. That was, you starting some shit already, man. Hey, so I watched the fight. I actually didn't continue to score it. Initially, about the first half of the fight, I was kind of keeping score of it, but you could see, I mean, beyond the obvious commentary that was super, super heavy on Lomachenko and his every move, but you could see as the fight went on, he was eventually breaking Campbell down. Campbell was very, very game in that fight. I mean, there were a few of those rounds in the first half where I actually had him winning them, but Lomachenko put him down. He started to get his game down. He drained him down. Got him a little fatigued in there, knocked him down, and he in the end he did what he needed to do. Do I think that puts him as the number one though? Not at this point right now. For what Canelo has done, and even with what some will say Bud has done, I'm not there yet. I'm not there yet, and I'm willing to go down for the fight on that one.
Speaking of haters, you actually wrote on our group chat. I'm not going to say it verbatimly because I don't remember exactly word for word, but something of the lines of you thought that Luke Campbell was going to pull it off. Now, my question to you is, we know it was you. My question to you is, did you say that because you thought Luke was winning, or did you say that because you thought Luke was going to win prior to round one before the bell even rang?
No, absolutely not. I didn't have any thought that Luke Campbell was going to win that fight prior to the first bell. I saw Luke Campbell, giving Lomachenko a lot of problems, fighting him as a fellow southpaw, which I guess we can all agree it seems to be a little Achilles heel for Lomachenko. Won't bring that, Tank is coming, just so y'all know, but. I don't know if the size advantage what was keeping Luke game throughout the fight. I just think he fought the right fight and not letting Lomachenko catch the angles that he normally catches against most fighters. Lomachenko is a great fighter. I'll never take that away from him. I said this, I would say maybe 6-7 months ago, and I'm pretty sure, Courtney, correct me if I'm wrong, Lomachenko has peaked. 14 fights into his career, Lomachenko has peaked. And there are a lot of guys who are catching on to his style. And, he was hurt a few times in the fight against Luke Campbell. When I said that I thought Luke was going to pull it out, it's because I saw Luke Campbell doing things and, absorbing the punishment that he was taking but not backing down from the fight, and I do think that his corner had the right game plan going into the fight. My opinions on Lomachenko is just, I never like when media outlets force a fighter down everyone's throat. And we know that prior to his professional debut, that's all you ever heard. Lomachenko, two-time gold medalist, 401 in amateur fights, going to be the next superstar. Lost against literally a cab driver. I don't care what y'all say. Orlando Salido drives cabs.
Yeah, but he had
he drives cabs. And that's the type of style that's gonna wear Lomachenko down. I think in the near future, in my opinion.
Disagree with you. I gotta say this. I think he's met, if not exceeded, all expectations in terms of what the media has been feeding since day one. Yeah, he did lose against a guy named Salido, who probably weighed 25 to almost 30 pounds more than what he did on fight night, who was fighting extremely dirty, who was against a fighter that was visibly much smaller than him, who in round 12, if you watch the fight, he was wearing Salido down to the point where it looked like Salido was going to get knocked out. So, but it's not like, look, let's compare like Anthony Joshua, another fighter that the media has been throwing down everybody's throat, right? Who a lot of people are not sold on for the obvious reasons. He lost to Reeves, but he doesn't meet the eye test. Like this guy has 14 or 15 fights, but he's got already a great resume. Guys like Rigo, who many of you thought that, was going to beat him, and he made him look like an amateur. Guys like Nicholas Walters, albeit took a sabbatical, but was a monster prior to that. Guys like Gary Russell, who he beat. Guys like freaking Linares. He went up a division and beat the man. He just beat the man of that division. Luke Campbell is not a walk in a park. Like, people treat Luke Campbell like he's some average boxer. I mean, he's not, top-tier boxer. He's a B-level boxer, but a guy who's much bigger than him. So, I mean, I got to disagree with, like, the media throwing down. Like, he's visibly a pleasant boxer to watch when he's in the ring. He is in a division where I think he's actually small for, because he should go back to, my opinion, should go back to 130. But he's in a division where he's basically going to be the smaller guy every time, and he's putting guys down who are much bigger than him. So you almost make it seem like he's a hype job when truly he isn't. And I'm going to go back to you, Courtney. You watched the fight. You saw it. I think you sort of kind of scored it a little bit more my way, not as wide as the scorecard suggested, or like I had it. But what was your reaction, and what do you think? What do you think is next? Like, what's a feasible fight despite all the network issues? Obviously, him fighting under the top rank. What do you think is next? Do you think potentially a fight against Tank Davis isn't a possibility in the next year or so? Now that Tank is going up.
No, absolutely not. I do not see Floyd or Al Haymon blessing Tank Davis going up and fighting Lomachenko. Like the only way I see Floyd and Al Haymon not standing in the way of a Tank Davis Lomachenko fight is if Lomachenko between now and then shows some serious vulnerabilities, or takes an unexpected loss, or just basically somebody would have to throw like a monkey wrench or a cog in the wheel for that to fight to happen. I think what they're banking on is a big money fight coming up for Lomachenko on the horizon, where he might want to step up and fight somebody at 140, or he might want to step down, go down in weight and fight somebody at 130, or just he has all four belts. And as we all know, it's hard to make mandatory defenses when you're holding all four belts. So I think they're banking on something like that, where maybe Lomachenko would give up a belt rather than take a mandatory or something like that, and then they slide in. But I just don't see Al Haymon and Floyd not standing in the way of that until something came along that absolutely slid that situation or that scenario in their favor. I mean, that's just how I see it. Y'all, I think I'm cast as a pessimist because I give a lot of weight to the promotional and network divide, but I mean that's just that's the world we're living in, and that's unfortunately a big limiting factor in a lot of the fights that should happen not happening in the sport right now. As far as it relates to Lomachenko versus Campbell, I think it was a fight where Campbell did fairly well early on. And then from there, he had some flashes of brilliance in the middle rounds, and then from there, it was mostly a fight where he was just hanging tough. Basically with his size, it was going to be hard for Lomachenko to just go in there and go upside his head and do everything he wanted to, but from a power aspect. But from a boxing aspect, I just saw Lomachenko in the driver's seat once he found his groove and once he found his openings. And then once the fight got down the stretch, he went ahead and differentiated himself in the eyes of the judges, and that's how I saw it. I didn't see it as wide as the judges at ringside, but I mean it was a decisive win. Lomachenko's performance against Campbell, I wouldn't say it was necessarily impressive, but it was I'm sorry. Inherently, it is impressive because he did what he did against a guy who was so much bigger and physically imposing, and a guy who's not a slouch. You know what I'm saying? Luke Campbell is, he's an Olympic gold medalist himself, has a great pedigree, has a great skill set, has a great trainer, and he's done the thing at British and European level competition, and he's mixed well with world class guys. So I mean, as far as Luke Campbell going in there and hanging tough with Lomachenko, who many people rate as the best fighter in the world, he showed grown, so to speak, and he did what he was supposed to do. Lomachenko did what he was supposed to do, and that defending the belt. I mean, that's obviously the top priority, and that's just how I saw that performance. As far as if that performance did anything for me personally, to make the case for Lomachenko at number one, no, I can't rate Lomachenko number one off that performance. If somebody wants to make the case for Lomachenko at number one, it's one that I really can't say is absurd. But if you're saying, okay, that's if you're citing specifically Lomachenko beating Campbell in a title defense as the criteria for him being number one right now, I would have to seriously disagree with that. And I'm kind of skewed towards towards Daniel's view of Lomachenko. But the thing is, I really there's nothing that Lomachenko does or for what I see from him that gives me cause to hate. You know what I'm saying? Lomachenko is a fighter it's impossible not to give him his props. What I've always said is I hate Lomachenko's fan base. I feel they use a bully pulpit within popular media and what they see on ESPN and Top Rank's promotional tools to basically in effect shove him down people's throats as number one. And I think that takes away from Lomachenko. You know what I'm saying? I'm a person. I want to sit there and I want to appreciate greatness. And I want to take stock of Lomachenko's great performances. He's got the skills that pay the bills, and he cashes them every time he's in there with somebody.
If I could jump in here,
I would just like the conversation to be about Lomachenko and what he's doing. It's not always tied into the number one pound for pound narrative.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I could jump in, guys, I don't know if I'm still on the line, but
yeah,
when we take fan bases into account, it's already veering off the plane of being objective, right? Because you can make that argument over essentially any top 20 boxer in the game, right? We can talk about nearly any fighter. Look, Spence is being put on pound-for-pound list at number 3 constantly, right? I think the ESPN list has him at 4 or 5. We can break that down and say, so what win does he have to be 5th best in the world ahead of guys like Golovkin, right? Now, Golovkin's resume we can parse through all day, but Spence's best win is a lightweight, right? Now, I love Spence. He's a great talent, but we're not going to talk eye test. It's his fan base, right? It's the public, it's the, media behind it. It's the, promoters, whatever. We can't sit here and talk about fan base when we are actually objectively weighing a fighter. I think that's what happens, right? And I think that's one of the reasons people look so negatively on the Campbell fight for Lomachenko, because it's front-runner syndrome. Anytime you have a guy that is expected to dominate and there's even a competitive round, people overvalue the competitive round effort in the B-side fighter as a way to denigrate the effort from the A-side fighter in Lomachenko. You know, and to agree with you, Courtney, on this subject, Luke Campbell, Olympic gold winner. I don't know if you guys have all seen his other fights, but his other 2 losses were split decision losses against Linares. So if you watch that fight, he objectively beat Linares, and against Mendy, which could have gone other way, right? So you're talking about a guy who, if fate was on his side, could have entered the Lomachenko fight undefeated. But we don't know about him in the American fan base, and we're sitting here saying, oh, he lost against this guy, lost against this guy, has 2 losses on his record. He's a B-side fighter. No, he's an Olympic gold medalist with a very high, level of skill, large frame, fights at a high level, and gave a few competitive rounds. I scored at 3 rounds for Campbell. Okay, so 9 rounds to 3. That's essentially a dominant performance, just because there's some close rounds. But now we're saying, oh, it wasn't the Lomachenko we expected, where, like Courtney said, it went upside his head. No, that was never going to happen. Lomachenko's fighting above his natural weight class against a guy that's naturally bigger, extremely talented, fights with a very high-level technical amateur style, gave a few problems that Lomachenko solved and broke him down. And then he's resorting to MMA tactics in the 12th round to avoid getting knocked out. But then people say, oh, we can't rate him off this. Okay, but we are rating Spence so highly over a win over Mikey Garcia, or Crawford over a win over Ndongo, who did not pan out whatsoever. So it's very selective how people place pound-for-pound fighters. Now, personally, I think 1 to 5 pound-for-pound is a toss-up. Whoever you want doesn't make a difference. But people here will always think.
Who is your number 1, Nick?
Honestly, just off of resume, I'm giving it to Canelo. Now, I don't think skill-wise I would put him number 1, but I'm giving it to him off paper.
You better not say Usyk.
Canelo.
I couldn't hear you.
He said you better not say
Usyk.
No. Usyk's rated fairly. What, a bottom 10 or bottom 5 of the top 10, if that makes sense. He could easily be number 1 if he moves up and grabs it. I mean, he is moving up, but if he grabs the title in a few fights, but who cares? You know, the race for number 1 doesn't really mean anything when we have guys that are, you know, it's a popularity contest past, you know, you got a guy in the 3 division. Sure.
And let me ask you this, right? Because we go back and forth with this debate. That Lomachenko's days of dominating the way he was dominating at 126 and 130 are over, because now he's at a naturally bigger division. Do you think those days are done? That this is as good as you're going to see against Linares? Against fighters like Linares and Luke Campbell. Do you believe that is what's going to keep on happening, or do you think that maybe he'll go back down to 130? Because the question really is, the only guy that I can see that he can fight at 135, if it's a possibility at some point, that is basically kind of like his size would be like Tank Davis.
Yeah, and I'll take anybody's bet on him versus Tank if it's in the next year. But I do agree somewhat here. I think he's fighting above his natural weight class. But the next fight down the line is the winner of Commey and Teofimo, right? And if I'm not mistaken, that's for all the major belts in the division, if that fight pans out. So if he becomes undisputed, sure, he should move down. Will that happen? No, because the bigger money fights, in my opinion, will be at 140 or 145. 145 is a death knell for the kid. I think he's already fighting well above his natural weight class, because it's not like he's an amateur or a younger guy moving up between the weight classes. He's already, 31. You don't just fill out when you're 31 and naturally weigh 126 pounds. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have met him or come across from him, like, right in front of you. The guy's fucking tiny.
I have. He's small. He's tiny.
He's tiny. You guys have met my girl. He's smaller than her. He's a small fucking dude, right? You feel like you could put him in your backpack. He's fighting above his weight class that he should be at. Likely the guy should be fighting in 126. But he's fighting well above it while other guys are shrinking down to fight for the advantage. So sure, it will be more challenging for these 135 guys or 140 pounders that he'll fight in the future, which will detract from domination. But if he can move down to 130, he'll run the table with all these guys. And I don't think anyone on this panel would disagree with that. do we honestly think, Haney is going to beat the shit out of Lomachenko?
Hell no.
Courtney, I'm going to let Courtney redirect really quick. Courtney, I think you wanted to say something. You wanted to chime in really quick.
Yeah, basically, I wanted to just do a redirect as an add-on. I'm going to say this emphatically about Lomachenko. From 130 to 135, or okay, we can even go further. You know what I'm saying? 126, because that's naturally Lomachenko's weight class. From 126 to 135, nobody's beating Lomachenko, to include Haney and Tank.
Yeah.
I think people can make minuscule arguments for the chances that Tank or Haney would have against him, and like I said, that would be largely dependent on the unexpected happening to Lomachenko. But I think as it stands right now, nobody who even has a sniff of 135 is fucking with Lomachenko.
Yeah, and I would agree, and that's the thing. So we're all sitting here saying, oh, he lost 2 or 3 rounds against an Olympic gold medalist at 135, who will likely move up in his next fight, according to all the press rumors, right? But we have a guy fighting above his natural weight and still winning titles and may still become undisputed at this weight, at one of the historic 8 divisions. There's very little hate when it comes to Lomachenko, but people will do it because people hate a front runner.
Then you have a strong case to say, all right, as good as Canelo's resume is, Lomachenko's got a very good resume. But at that point, if he does unify, you have a strong argument that he's number one. I mean, you got a strong argument now that he can be number one. But if he does that,
he beats the Commey Teofimo winner, he's the number one.
He's
right
number
now,
one. Yeah.
Right now, I don't really have a real number one other than Canelo, just off strength of resume. But that's without breaking down Canelo's, questionable 4 or 5 wins.
Canelo got like 6 L's. I don't care what y'all say.
He's got what?
He's got
like
plenty of
6
them.
L's.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dan.
Yeah. So I have to agree with you. If he does unify at 135, which I also agree with you, he's obviously at a huge disadvantage when it comes to weight and size. I have to put him at number one pound for pound, and it'll be very hard to say that he doesn't deserve it. But there's a fight coming up, which involves at some point Lomachenko in the future, which is Teofimo Lopez versus Richard Commey. Who wins that fight? And there's also been some recent events that have occurred, which I want Aaron, you're there. I want you to shed some light on that. And also, who do you think wins that fight?
Between Commey and Teofimo?
Yes.
Actually, I might be going against the grain. I think Commey has a really good chance at stopping Teofimo.
Man, you're not going against the grain. Teofimo has no business in that fight.
If you think he wins,
a lot of people are saying that.
Well, yeah, that's my thing. I think Commey, obviously his height and his reach and the power on top of that, I think that's going to give Teofimo problems. So it's going to be a very interesting fight. And I got a question for everyone else. Let's say Commey, he takes out, I don't want to say take out, but he defeats Teofimo. How do you see a matchup between him and Lomachenko? What does everyone talk about that possible matchup?
Commey gets absolutely taken apart by Lomachenko.
I mean, that was a fight that was supposed to happen before. That was a fight that was supposed to happen before Commey got the injury to his shoulder, if I'm not mistaken. But we can keep this assessment short. Teofimo Lopez has no business in the ring with Richard Commey, and both of these guys are New York guys, and Commey's gonna destroy this dude. And I like Lopez, but he has no business in the ring with Commey at this point in his career.
I'm going Commey too. I think Commey takes it. The height presents a lot of problems that we saw with Nakatani. I think Comey's naturally a better fighter than Nakatani, stronger and better ring presence. But Teofimo does have business in the ring. He's earned his spot, but I do think he loses.
Do you guys feel that Teofimo's hype has come down a lot since the fight against Nakatani?
No, hold on. The whole hype around Teofimo Lopez, we had this argument, we had this discussion a few podcasts ago where people were comparing Devin Haney, Teofimo, who would win in that fight. And then, everyone, Teofimo would destroy him. And I'm like, listen, the difference between Devin Haney and Teofimo Lopez, honestly, are the goddamn Fortnite dances after the knockouts. Because Devin Haney is by far a better boxer, technically, than Teofimo Lopez. Teofimo just has these high-level knockouts who, once again, Top Rank and ESPN are trying to shove down our throats because he's a formidable fighter and he's marketable. But Teofimo Lopez is gonna get washed by Richard Commey, in my opinion. And Devin Haney, in my opinion, would have more of a right or more of a chance against a Lomachenko in the future than Lopez does.
Yeah, I don't think Lopez fares well against Lomachenko whatsoever.
Not long ago, a couple of months ago, people were like, Teofimo could beat Lomachenko and this, that, and the other, and da-da-da-da. And I feel like the hype has come down a little bit. And
it's because he does
that matchup.
Well, because people,
I was about to say, it's
people
because
become beholden to their
diggers.
horses. Yeah. People don't want to bet on the same thing when they know it's going to lose. They saw some hype come down, and they're not going to ride the same horse anymore.
So, what's your take on all this?
As far as the looming fight, Lomachenko versus Commey, I'm kind of conflicted, and I'm on wax on this podcast, as far as my enthusiasm for Teofimo Lopez. I'm still high on him. I don't think I'm any less high on him after the Nakatomi fight, because that was I think that was a fight for me. It seemed like they didn't scout Nakatomi very well. And you know what? And there's a common adage that Japanese or Asian fighters don't really travel well. But I think you have circumstances where Japanese fighters come over here and they surprise people. And we saw that with Kirkland. I think for me, that's the vibe I got from that fight, is that Teofimo Lopez's his team didn't really scout that fight well, and it didn't look like they really watched a lot of video, not a lot of good sparring. I know there was some turmoil he had personally with a family dispute concerning his marriage recently and stuff like that. Those things play a factor. So I'm not going to make a solid up or down on Teofimo Lopez in regard, just based off the Nakatomi fight. With Commey, I think this very possibly could be a very bad matchup for Teofimo Lopez, and I can visualize that fight not going well. But to say Commey is going to come in there and wash him, or he's going to come in there and wash Commey, I don't think that can be said. For me, it's more like along the lines of 50-50. But I see this though: if Teofimo does win against Commey, I think he's going to have to go in a dogfight. Commey is going to drag him through hell. And if he does beat Commey, I think he's going to come out on the other side of that diminished. As far as Lopez and Lomachenko, a few months ago I said that Lopez, he has a good chance. I still back then I said Lomachenko has a clear edge, but I thought Lomachenko had a plausible chance against or Lopez had a plausible chance against Lomachenko. The way I see it right now, I think Lomachenko would cut Commey and Teofimo Lopez to shreds. I think I think with Lomachenko's skill set and where he matches up with everybody at 135 right now, like I said earlier, I just don't see anybody who has a whip for 135 touching Lomachenko.
We're gonna move on. Really quick. We're gonna go on to Andy Ruiz versus Anthony Joshua.
Hey guys, before you move on, I gotta run. Great chopping up with everybody, and I'll call again soon. All right, guys.
Thank you for joining us, Nick.
Happy to. Have a good one, guys. Bye.
Thank you, Nick.
AJ versus Andy Ruiz. Obviously, they were in Saudi Arabia doing their press conference and doing their tour, which, by the way, he was actually on my brother's flight yesterday, and my brother told me, he called me up yesterday and he actually sent me a text with the email. So my brother is a manager at the airline in which he flew in, which is Emirates. And apparently they have to email the entire staff that once they arrive, he's the first one being escorted out. He didn't want to be bothered anymore. So apparently every passenger, well, I may be exaggerating, but a lot of passengers kept going up to him and just asking for autographs and pictures. And he looked like, my brother told me that he saw him in the morning. He looked exhausted. And he was traveling with an entourage of about 7 or 8 people. So that's my little inside story. So let's talk about AJ versus Ruiz. Early assessment on the anticipated rematch. What's everybody's take on what's going to happen, and thoughts on preparation for Ruiz. I mean, a lot of people, are talking shit about Ruiz, saying, he's not taking it serious, but that's only speculation. Nobody knows if he isn't or if he is. You have to think that a guy like that, who's a professional boxer, is taking it serious. So I'm going to start with D-Rock. I kind of know already your reaction, but what's your prediction as far as the rematch, and what's the assessment, or what's your thoughts on, people talking about Andy is really not preparing himself the proper way? And also,
a few things.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Go into AJ's mindset.
I can't go into AJ's mindset. Going to the preparation for this fight. The viral video and pictures that were going around of Andy Ruiz celebrating in his new mansion and his Rolls Royce and all this other stuff. A lot of times you got to sit back and let these fighters enjoy the fruits of their labor. These are guys who put their lives on the line every time they step in the ring. Andy Ruiz is a fighter who arguably should be undefeated, and he's earned everything he's gotten. A lot of people, he celebrated a month before his birthday because he knows he's about to go into a 3-month training camp for what now is going to be the biggest fight of his life, even though the first Joshua matchup should have been. But he has to show everyone that the first fight wasn't a fluke. And what I do respect about Andy Ruiz and the way he carries himself is he never seems rattled. He's not afraid of the big moment. And he goes in there, he trains, and he gives it his all every time he steps into the ring. There are people that say that Joshua, just had an off night, didn't prepare to his full capacity. But whose fault is that? That's Anthony Joshua's fight. At the end of the day, there's always going to be a fighter that has your number. And at this point, the way Andy Ruiz attacks those combos, low to high, high to low, it's just a formula to beat Anthony Joshua, who we know fights straight down the middle. And once again, his conditioning problems were exposed. You guys remember in our personal chat, after the third round, I said that if Anthony Joshua doesn't stop here, he's going to get knocked out, because I saw his mouth opening. I saw him backing up. I saw his jab lowering. I saw Andy Ruiz getting stronger as the fight went on, and he went down and knocked the guy down 4 times within the fight. Courtney disagreed with me earlier when I made a comment that I felt that Anthony Joshua looked a little rattled during these face-offs, and maybe rattled was the wrong word. I probably should have said that he didn't have the same intensity that he displayed going into their first fight, although it was a short-notice fight, or the same intensity he was displaying against Jarrell Miller, or the same intensity he showed against Dominic Brazil, or the same energy he displays against the fight he was running from in Deontay Wilder. He got his ass whooped. It wasn't a close fight. He got his ass whooped, and he knows that. And that's why he was gracious in the defeat, because there was no excuses for what happened. He got his ass beat up and down the ring, and now he knows that he has to make up for that loss in a big way. And if he doesn't get the knockout, honestly, it's back to square one, because I don't want to see him in the ring against Wilder or the Furies. But my prediction for the fight is that Andy Ruiz does strike gold again and will be Anthony Joshua.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to let everybody else talk in a second. So I don't think he needs to knock Andy out. I just think he needs to win. But he needs to visibly win. He needs to not impressively, but he needs to leave no doubt when his hand gets raised that he's the actual winner. And I hope for Andy's sake that there isn't any funny business in terms of corruption, because they are going to be fighting. They call it neutral grounds, but let's just be honest, it's not neutral. So they are going to be fighting in Saudi Arabia. Let's just hope that it's a fair fight and that the judges score it fairly, because, I mean, I watched the Andy Ruiz versus Joe Parker fight for the third time, and Andy, in my opinion, deserved the W in that fight. So let's just hope. Yeah, let's just hope that isn't the case. But I think that the outcome of the fight is more predicated onto what AJ has to do versus what Andy has to do. Let's not forget that AJ also had Andy's number in the fight. You know, the fight could have ended in round 3. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, people forget Andy did hit the canvas before AJ hit the canvas. And I'm not making an excuse for anybody or for AJ. But I just feel like AJ has the size, has the height, has the reach advantage. And if he uses it, there's really not much that Andy could use. Yes, he's got fast hands. But if he closes the distance, if AJ doesn't allow him to come in the inside and AJ uses his jab well, I think it's going to be a repetition of what we saw in AJ versus Joe Parker. Same exact.
Yeah, but he had all of those advantages in the first fight.
Disadvantage. He also prepared two things. Disadvantage, and this was said multiple times. Prepared in Miami, which is stupid to have a camp there. And the biggest one, he also, let's not forget, he also prepared for a completely different fighter. And all of a sudden now you're fighting against Andy Ruiz, right? Which now everybody knows is no slack.
Yeah, but Andrew Ruiz had the same disadvantage if that's the case too.
And it's not like that he was expected to be an upgrade.
If Anthony Joshua had a disadvantage of taking a fight with the guy he couldn't prepare for, Andrew Ruiz had the same problem. He fought a month and a half prior to fighting a guy with 4 belts. So I don't want to hear that shit about Anthony Joshua.
That's understandable. But when you're preparing to fight a guy like Baby Miller, and all of a sudden this guy who's highly skilled, whose lack of size or lack of height actually poses a problem for a guy who's that much taller than you, and there's a size. The size advantage in terms of height is actually a disadvantage for Anthony Joshua, and not the other way around. It really isn't the other way around.
Well, it can be that way, but you just said it yourself. If he keeps him away with this, so I mean, it could be a disadvantage or an advantage. Either way it goes. You know, when it comes down to it, who he prepared for and all of that shit, like he didn't prepare with stamina. Like no matter which person he was facing, and that's been one of his main issues from before this fight and several fights. So how he prepared, and if he went to Miami and all that shit, like I feel it, but like the excuses for this dude to stay in his graces are amazing. Like he needs to clear, he needs to show what he is more than just muscle and physique. Like. He doesn't have anything with the damn physique. The dude he gasses damn near every fight. And he's going, but if he doesn't stop that right now, he's going to get worked again by Ruiz. And his career is going to damn near be over.
And I don't know about career being over. And if anybody's career could be over, there's only 2 or 3 boxers whose career could be over right now. They're fine financially. And he's obviously one of them. Right?
Yeah, but we're not talking about his finances. I mean, all of them.
No.
That don't matter.
But let's not act like AJ's been a hype job up until now. He does have a pretty strong resume leading up to the fight. He does have a strong resume. You know, we can go back and forth and argue who's got the better resume. Even though I think Deontay has the better resume now that he's got Tyson Fury in his column. But you know, he did fight, and everybody can say, yeah, he fought Klitschko, and Klitschko was old, and this, that, and the other, but he fought a very well-experienced guy who dominated the heavyweight division for a decade. You know, he fought guys like Joe Parker. So the resume like people keep talking about his resume or keep saying, oh, the first time he fought somebody good, that's what happened. No, I mean, he has fought other opponents that were worthy, that are good fighters. You know, we can't keep saying that it's the first time he got tested and he got dropped. We all know
My
that
thing is he gassed.
We saw that with Klitschko.
My thing is he gassed every fight. Not the resume or he gasses every fight.
The thing on his physique, though. I mean, if you listen to Joe Rogan's got an episode where he talks about guys like AJ, guys like Conor McGregor, who are very muscular and very lean. You got to listen to it. There's a scientist that goes on and talks about it and how their muscles react and how their stamina levels are completely different. And you see also, don't go too far. You see a guy like Canelo, and we've seen him on a couple of occasions where you see him gassing like in the middle round. So there is a trend with heavy or muscular type fighters in boxing and in other combat sports. But what is he doing about it? What is he doing about it?
Not a goddamn thing.
I don't know if there's much.
That's my point.
I don't know if there's much that you can do. So I'm gonna
absolutely is something you can do. Courtney touched on a similar subject earlier. You know, when we brought up the Canelo incident, Canelo, if he gasses, he learns how to preserve his energy and exert it when it's necessary. Anthony Joshua hasn't been able to attain that skill set yet. He's putting on weight for these fights when he already has conditioning issues. He was gassing out against Dan Carlos Takam, until he was able, that fight was stopped prematurely. Anthony Joshua's, when we critique Anthony Joshua, it has nothing to do with him or us fighting against the hype job that he is, but he's not doing anything to improve himself. His diva tendencies have gotten the best of him. And he went to Miami and he's partying and he's not taking these fighters seriously and he's not worried about guys like Andrew Reeves and taking these fighters short notices. That's on him. We can't make excuses for him and why he's losing or why he's gassing out. He needs to get better. If the zone wants to justify his $30 million a year, they need to get on his ass and be like, bro, we're paying you. Stop all that shit. You don't need to call the airline and say Anthony Joshua doesn't want to be bothered. Anthony Joshua, you're not the fucking champion of the world. Get the fuck out of here. Like, who cares about you right now? Andrew Reeves has the Mexican Secret Service guarding him because he's the world champion. He's getting parades thrown in his hometown. He's getting gifted Rolls Royce. That guy deserves the praise. Anthony Joshua is not the champion anymore. So I don't care about Anthony Joshua and his deficiencies and his disadvantages going into this fight or his advantages. Everything that he had going for him going into the fight, the first fight, he has going for him now. What is he doing to get better? That's the question that's going to be answered in the rematch. If you're going to assess the rematch right now, you can only assess it on what we've seen from him from the past 4 or 5 fights. And that's he gasses out, he fights straight up and down the middle, he's susceptible to a right hand, and he doesn't adapt to guys who are bringing it to him. Right? Am I wrong? He's putting on weight. It's like I'm getting speeding tickets, but I don't get my foot off the damn pedal. This guy has problems with conditioning, and he's putting on weight. That to me is not the sign of a champion or a guy who's respecting the sport or taking his craft seriously. Anthony Joshua is not doing anything to get better. He's happy where he is. He's happy with the celebrity treatment. He's happy with all that shit. Like, I don't feel bad for the guy. You know what? He's a good fighter, yes, but he lost, and he's probably going to lose again this time around.
This question to Courtney before you go on, as far as what's your prediction on the next fight and go into Anthony Joshua's mindset. I'm going to ask you this one question, and then you're going to answer the other two. Anthony Joshua, overachieved or underachieved?
He's just achieved. I don't think it's an over or under. I think with who Anthony Joshua is and what he brings to the table and what the table is set like currently in the heavyweight climate, he's done everything he's supposed to do up to this point except beat one dude who he was supposed to beat, and that's Andy Ruiz. As far as where I think AJ's mind state is, Daniel, he made a reference of AJ's his behavior or his demeanor at the presser earlier on. I think Anthony Joshua, that's his personality. I think he's a humble dude. I think at times he's an understated dude. He's one of those quintessential British gentlemanly warriors. I mean, that's who Joshua is. So I mean, as far as where he's at mentally, I think he let himself down. I think he's disappointed. He had a lot on his shoulders. And if you look at the masses that were coming out and attending his fights and putting asses in seats at Wembley, and the amount of pay-per-view sales. In the UK, pay-per-view sales against some of the dudes who he's fighting, he was carrying a demographic, he was carrying a nation, he was carrying the British Commonwealth on his shoulders, and he let him down in Madison Square Garden. And I think he knows his preparation wasn't where it needed to be. I think he knows his mind state wasn't where it needs to be, and I think he's obviously humbled. Yeah, Daniel was right. He's been humbled. You can't not be humble when you get your ass whooped. But I think AJ was a humble person to begin with. As far as where I see the rematch going, I see the belts going back to the UK. And because we're talking about mind state, I've said it repeatedly in the group, and I'm saying it now on air. Andy Ruiz did not believe he was going to win that first fight. Andy Ruiz surprised himself, and all this mad scramble over the venue, over location, over money, all this stuff with Andy Ruiz, he is now hedging, and he's going into contingency mode because I think in his mind state he knows that lightning struck, and it very well damn sure might not strike again. And hey, I can be wrong about anything. I'm a man with an opinion. I've been right before on air. I've been wrong before on air. But I think where I honestly see it from an objective standpoint is I think AJ is going to do what he has to do to bring his belts home. And it might be controversial decision. He might get the jump on Ruiz early and actually finish the job this time. But I mean, I see all scenarios pointing to AJ getting his hand raised and getting his belts back against Andy Ruiz.
Point, Tommy, I'm looking for you.
What you looking for? Yeah.
I want to know your opinion. I don't want it as animated as D-Rock's.
There was a lot of emotion in that shit.
Hey,
he was in his feelings.
Hey, D-Rock, tell us how you really feel.
He went Drake on her ass. He went full Drake.
Hey, Ruiz is gonna win. I already said it. Ruiz got this. I agree. I agree with D-Rock. He hasn't done anything to improve. I'm not impressed right now. He's not showing anything. So I got Ruiz in this, man. And not that it's going to be a wash or anything like that, but I think that Ruiz is going to be able to do exactly what set him apart. Utilize his amateur background and skill set, and he's to do to gas this man once again, because I ain't seen shit from him. Anthony Joshua.
I mean, very quickly before the end of the night, the one mistake, and I believe Andy Ruiz will win the fight, but where I can see him losing is relying on wanting to knock Anthony Joshua out again. And if he goes into the fight with that mentality, then he will lose.
Yeah, he's got to be smart. If he just thinks he's just going to just come in there and like he's just got his number, then yeah, we could be singing a whole different tune after this is over with. Kind of like how Courtney was with the Pac Thurman fight, right? Fuck you.
Listen, Courtney doesn't need to relive that prediction. Let him live. Aaron, we didn't forget about you. Guys, we only got a few more minutes. Aaron, what is your prediction, and what do you think of AJ's mindset? Do you think he's keeping it strong, or do you think that the end is near for him?
I think Andy Ruiz has got most of the public fool, making them think that he's not taking it serious. I think Andy Ruiz will be preparing for a better Anthony Joshua. He's gonna, bring up the ante, and I think he'll win Ruiz, but it's gonna be on the scorecards. I kind of disagree with you, Glenn, saying that if it goes to the scorecards, I actually believe that that Ruiz will win on that aspect. And so I have it Ruiz winning the sequel, going to the scorecard. So that's my take. But I do, as far as the promotion for Saudi Arabia, I do agree with Cody. Like, I wasn't really a fan of how Ruiz was stalling, claiming that he's not going to fight in Saudi Arabia. But we all know, Eddie Hearn has all the leverage. He has all the legalities in his favor. So we all knew that they're going to, Eddie Hearn, he was going to, wherever they're going to fight, that's where they're going to fight. But the match itself, I got Ruiz winning.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, I want to thank everyone who tuned in today, especially this team. We always bring the fire. Mike, Tommy, Aaron, Courtney, y'all know what we do. Special shout out to Nick Angarami for hanging out with us and bringing that fire, bro. Like, you guys are always welcome to join us anytime you like. Slide into the DMs, but actually, pause. Don't slide into the DMs. Write us a message. www.thestandingpodcast.com. We're also on Instagram, The Standing 8 Podcast. You can catch every episode on Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, previous episodes. Shout out to Anthony Saldana from Supreme Boxing. Make sure you catch their podcast, Beat the Count, From Proof Media, our great friends. Joseph Correa, we always keep it 100 with you guys. Shout out to my gym, Everybody Fights in New York City. Shout out to Ironbound Boxing here in Newark, New Jersey. We can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this episode, and we'll catch you guys on the flip side. Once again, www.thestanding8podcast.com. Fellas, pleasure as always.